Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
My guest today is the Superhuman Life podcast. He does a lot to coach men. On the screen next to him, it says Coach Frank. So super excited to have him here because I know he all about impact. He's all about being intentional. Frank commented that he's intentional with what you put into your body, how you move your body, what you put into your mind, and who you allow to influence you. So right on, brother. Could you tell us more about yourself, more about how you got to be Coach Frank and impacting the world like you have been?
First off, Marty, I'm grateful to be here. I appreciate you for taking the time out and opening up your platform. And hopefully we can have a purposeful and meaningful conversation that'll serve your listeners. And, my goal here is to maybe reach the guy that I was 7 years ago, the guy that was successful on the outside, but was living a double life behind closed doors. So, I came to be Coach Frank, and more specifically in porn addiction recovery space, really as a byproduct of my own personal 25-year plus journey and struggles with porn addiction. I grew up as an athlete, playing sports, leading sports teams. In my early career, early 20s, I got into sales, leadership, and personal development in the corporate sector, and ran a fitness company side by side with that as well. So I was always impacted by coaches in my life, and I always had the ability to kind of coordinate, bring people together for something on the field or something in the workplace. I struggled with kind of a secret double life for a very, very long time. And through a series of what I would say are godly inspired events, I know you're a strong man of faith. I surrendered my life to Christ in October of 2018 after having really no relationship with him for the first 35 years of my life. And it was that single defining event, Marty, that really led me down a new trajectory in my life. So I was impacted. I was brought to Christ through some very strong, kingdom-driven, influential men. But when I started to try to walk in truth and integrity, I began to really realize that I wore a mask of a bodybuilder. I wore a mask of an athlete. I wore a mask of a successful entrepreneur, all really hiding what was broken inside of me. So I spent the year of 2019 really healing myself of that. I got free from a 25 plus year porn addiction. It was in that summer of 2019 that God put it on my heart to share my story. So back then, there were very few people that were openly discussing porn. It was still considered a very taboo conversation. And I don't think we really understood the impact that it was having and how addictive it really was. It's been interesting to see that conversation shift over the last 7 years. But because I'd struggled so long behind closed doors, but had achieved success in the world, I thought that maybe what I had gone through would be valuable to other people. So I launched the Superhuman Life podcast in July of 2019. At the time, I felt where God was calling me to utilize a platform that I built on the social platforms through my fitness company. But the conversation quickly got picked up. We were very successful. One part was Apple put us on their front page, new and noteworthy. So we gained a lot of early traction with those early conversations. At the time, I was running my fitness company. I was also a VP in a marketing agency. So I had a lot of going on professionally, and this was more of a passion for me at the time. But 7-8 months into hosting the show and having probably at that point 30, 40 conversations with other people that had stories of victory and overcoming, guys started to reach out and ask for help. So in January of 2020, after a dozen or so requests by men to help them overcome their porn addiction, I took a leap of faith and kind of took on a couple of clients without really knowing what the outcome was going to be. We had success there, and that laid the framework and foundation for what now has really been our main priority and focus for the last 6 years, which has been building the Rebuilt Man, which is our organization that helps guys in the trenches with porn addiction, really catering to high successful individuals, entrepreneurs, business owners. We've worked with a handful of pro athletes, guys that are successful on the outside, but are once again, like me, living with a secret life behind closed doors. So we have over 1,800 successful transformations through our frameworks and recovery programs, and a very thriving community of men that are looking for more out of life. So we believe in identity transformation. We believe that porn is never really the problem. It's a symptom of something else. Really begin to heal those root causes. Pathway to freedom really unfolds itself in front of us. And, it's cool to see guys step into freedom, step into bigger purpose, bigger calling, restored marriages, renewed identity, reconciliation with their relationship with Christ. So very mission-driven work still to this day. But as your question was, what led me here? It was really the byproduct of my own story and journey through overcoming that that has kind of positioned me to lead the men in the way that I do.
Talk to me, Frank, a little more about that 2018 salvation experience. What was it, just a men in your life, a Bible? I mean, how did that happen? How did it go down? Did you grow up in the church or was it all new to you?
I didn't grow up in church. My dad was a Catholic growing up, and my mom probably would have identified herself as agnostic. So for whatever reason, my parents, when they started to raise a family, they made a choice to not raise us in the church. But because my dad came from a Catholic family, my grandfather still wanted us to be in church, at least on holidays. So my relationship with the church as a kid was difficult because it was always these big glamorous events of like Easter where we had to get dressed up.
Sure.
And, we'd go buy like a suit as like a 6-year-old. I was like, why am I wearing this uncomfortable clothes? I would see my parents kind of argue, get us there. We were always late. It was always kind of wrestling. We're standing in the back hallway of church. We didn't feel like we belonged. So from a very early age, I identified myself as a non-church person. Like I literally saw the world that there were two types of people. There are the people that were going to church that appeared to have everything put together. And then there were us. Parents wrestled with their relationship. It wasn't one of deep connection, love, and intimacy. They ended up getting a divorce when I was 15 years old. So I saw a lot of struggles through my family with drugs, with alcohol. I quickly identified as, well, those people in the church, they must be good people. We are bad people. And that was an identity that I held for a very long time. As I, grew into my adult life, it was a conversation that I really steered away from. I was always searching. Like I was deep into personal development. I was deep into trying to understand spirituality in a new age perspective. At the same time, I'm chasing every possible pleasure that the world give me. I can look back now realizing like what I was trying to do. I was trying to fill the hole in my heart, but I wasn't aware enough or woken up enough at the time to really understand the journey that I was on. But man, Marty, I could tell you, like looking back now as a man of faith, I could see that God always had his hand on my life. There were many, many moments, many decisions that I made that I should have never got myself out of, but only because I believe God had a bigger purpose and calling for me. He lifted me and carried me through those moments. So what led me to that moment in 2018 is the end of 2016, I had built a successful entertainment company. We were ticketing in event space, partnering with sports teams, with large venues, large events. We were kind of a bridge between the venues and the consumer, similar to a StubHub or a Vivid Seats. Okay. And that company was very successful, but it was unfulfilling without explaining. I didn't have a passion for waking up every day and selling tickets. It was purely where I saw an opportunity to make a lot of money. Well, I saw an end coming to that because I wasn't going to be able to continue to do it without feeling fulfilled. And I had this background in fitness that I had helped launch some gyms and do some personal training in the early 2000s. So I wanted to bring my two passions of business and entrepreneurship and fitness together. So at the end of 2016, I hired an online fitness coach to help learn the skills of online marketing, social media marketing, email, ClickFunnels, all that kind of world that I live in today. Through that investment into a mentor, into a mastermind, I got introduced to some really strong kingdom-driven men. Okay. I always say like, I hired a coach to teach me business, but he introduced me to Christ. And it was through about a 1.5 year relationship with these men, them accepting me into their life, them welcoming me into their homes, them opening up their life to me to show me that men can live a different way than every man that I'd known prior to that. And for about a year, I could see that there was a difference because I felt it in my heart, but I wasn't able to kind of put my finger on it. Well, that business struggled to really take off. In summer of 2018, I can remember I was having a conversation with a woman I was dating at the time. And I'm like, Steph, I don't know what I need to do. I'm running all the ads. I have the funnels in place. All of our automations are set up. We're doing everything that, and I listed off like 6 guys that I knew were a part of this group that were all running the same type of business. They're all crushing it, multiple 7 figures a year. And I'm struggling to make $2,000 a month. And it's like, I don't understand this. I'm like, maybe I need to go to church. These all guys all go to church on Sunday. Maybe the answer is in there. And it was just, I don't know why I said that. I have no clue like where that came from. And my girlfriend at the time had been raised Catholic, kind of walked away from the church, and she was open to supporting it. Now, what was interesting is we actually never took action. One of those individuals from that group, I had kept and maintained a weekly relationship with. He knew all of the struggles. He knew all of the pain points. He knew all of the wins. There was just this deep connection. And still to this day, he is my closest friend. He was flying down to Florida. I live in Tampa, Florida. It's about an 1.5 hours away from Orlando. And in late September, he said, Frank, I'm going to be in Orlando. I want you to come and visit me. Let's spend the day. Was all for it. One of my best friends. I'm going to get to spend some time with him in person. I figured we'd have lunch, shop, we talk business, what's working, what's going on with you, how are the kids, all this stuff. So I drove to Orlando from Tampa, picked him up at his hotel. And I said, hey, I know that a busy street in downtown Orlando is Church Street. There's some great restaurants. Let's go visit Church Street and see what we can find for lunch. Park the car. We walk into this, empty steakhouse on Thursday afternoon in downtown Orlando. We sit down. Waiter comes by. Can we get you guys anything? He said, well, just grab us some waters. We're going to be here a while. Josh looks at me. He said, Frank, can I ask you a couple questions? I said, you've been asking me questions for the last year and a half. You don't have to ask me if you can ask me any questions. He said, how's your relationship with your father? And what do you know about God? And it kind of took my breath away because I had that kind of intervention with Stephanie about my relationship with God 6 weeks prior to that. And I didn't know where that was coming from. Josh had told me at the time that he knew he was coming to Florida to share Christ with somebody. He packed a brand new Bible and it was in his suitcase. So we sat there over lunch and, basically Josh shared the gospel of Christ and who God is and who he is to me and how he, has a bigger mission calling for my life. We stepped out of the restaurant onto Church Street. Across from the restaurant, there was a history center. And for the first time ever, Josh laid his hands on me and we prayed together and I accepted Christ into my life on October 22nd of 2018. So that was a story, man. Looking back, I can see once again, God was really had his hand on my life, navigating me through so much, was always there for me, was running towards me as I was running away from him, but he never left me until I was ready. And that day came in 2018.
That's cool. And a great story from, Josh just being obedient to, he didn't know you were the one, but he must have figured it out. So that's really neat.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about this. And, he could obviously through the years see that there was things that I was wrestling with. And, he was, like you said, being obedient and was allowing me to be who I was without, trying to overly convict me until that moment was right for him.
Yeah, I'm a part of an accountability group called Pod 31, and we meet every Mondays, but 4 of us are saved. There's one guy that's not. And similar, like he grew up with I think Catholic. And yeah, all of us are kind of like praying for him and prodding him because he's our Frank. So it's good. Talk to me about how we as men can be posers and faking who we really are and kind of how you wrestled through that yourself.
Yeah, probably the word I used was mask, but
Yes.
the mask we wear are the posers that we become. Lewis Howes has a really powerful book, The Mask of Masculinity, and he unpacks and describes, I believe it's the 7 masks that men wear, and it's the success mask or the money mask, the athlete mask, the nice guy mask. There's a lot of different ones. It's not my book, so I'm not here to promote it, but it was a really eye-opening one for me. And, I think most men wear masks. Still to this day, I put a mask on. Like
sure.
I'm Coach Frank Rich right now as a podcaster wearing a particular mask. Problem I think is most men are unaware of these masks and unaware of how these masks are controlling their lives. We all have different hats that we have put on. For you, it's, real estate investor, it's podcast host, it's husband, it's father, it's accountability partner. All of these can be integrated into your identity, but they require you to show up a little bit different in every single area of your life. And what happens if you are unaware of these masks that you are putting on, then I believe you would begin to step in as a poser because you're not aware of how you're intentionally supposed to be serving or wearing this mask to serve the people in that area of your life. And that was a struggle for me for a very long time. My entire identity as a man was wrapped up in bodybuilding and strength and this physique that I built. 15 years old, I was shamed at a pool over the summer for being a little bit overweight. I had to wear husky jeans as a kid and it was an identity and it really shamed me. It made me feel a shell of myself and brought a lot of shame into my life. So when I found the gym, it was like, here's a way that I could escape that pain. I could push it down and I could step in any room. I'm 6'3", 240 right now, Marty, but at my biggest, I was almost 280 pounds. So it was like, for me, that mask was something that I wasn't intentional that I was wearing because I was hiding a pain inside. So it was me projecting strength to the world when I was really broken inside. I wore the mask of a successful entrepreneur when in reality, I was, the night before drowning in pornography, thinking about how I could, end my life. It's like, so I think there are masks that we all wear and we have to wear. I think the key is, are you aware and intentional about how you put that mask on? And then for the people that matter most to you, that's where I think authenticity has to come in. Like, right, the people in your life, your accountability partners. Josh, for me, Josh got to see the real me because he knew how to create the space for me to be open and be vulnerable. That's why he knew that there were broken things, even though I never told him that I was struggling with anything, because he had created a space where I could be open and vulnerable. And I think in your relationships, in your family, if you are not aware that you need to take the mask off at night, a lot of guys will just show up and they'll drown themselves in alcohol, social media, pornography in our world. Don't like the mask that you're wearing every day and aren't intentional about how you're using them. Then when you get home, you look yourself in the mirror, you're like, who's that guy? He's still wearing the mask. Then you have to drown yourself into something or escape that reality. And that's where our work comes in, because we help guys take these masks off and see who they really are so we could rebuild them up and then put them back out into the world.
That's beautiful. Have you seen the movie? I think it's called The Kid. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's a Walt Disney rated G movie. Maybe it's PG, but super clean. It's an older movie in the 90s.
Okay.
But he's a big fat poser. And his like 10 or 12-year-old self comes back to him and revisits him. And he works through all these wounds he had as a kid and realizes what a poser he is and his identity and how he actually misread a lot of things from his childhood. But it's a really powerful movie, like family rated movie. It's so powerful on poser, on mask, on identity, and how we got to work through it. But a lot of times, you know, as men, I can tend to be the avoider, the guy that's just going to stuff it and pretend it's all good. And so, yeah, I put on that mask and we never deal with stuff and the emotions never come out. And
I'm going to check that film out, especially if it's kid related. I think that's something that can be watched collectively as a family, you know, especially in today's world, Marty, right? Because social media has created an environment, you know, you only see the success reel of everybody else. And if you're not winning at that level, right now, the comparison trap presents itself, but then you almost feel the necessity to share your own highlight reel. So it's like the world sees it, you know, as this is everything is going great. In reality, relationship is broken with your wife. You guys haven't had sex in 6 months. Kids don't know who their father is because you're present, but never really present with them. So I think that internal struggle, you know, we see on a day-to-day basis. And I think for most men, the mask that they feel comfortable wearing, at least the men that we see on a regular basis, the success mask. Like, as long as I'm accomplishing winning, you know, and the numbers in the bank account are going up and family is provided for and the kids are in the private school and the wife is driving, you know, the Mercedes SUV. As long as that is taken care of, like, I'm winning. In reality, it's like, no, you've lost yourself through this entire journey and process, and you're losing yourself every day that you don't address it.
That's so good. For me, it's kill complacency, but the opposite of complacency is intentionality. And kind of to your point, like, not wearing a mask takes so much intentionality and it takes so much effort and work to be our real self and our true self and say, hey, honey, I'm not buying you a new car. It's not as good as I made it look on social media or whatever. But that's hard, right? And we want to protect our pride and our dignity. So we put on the mask. And social media, I'm glad you brought that up. It's so easy to fake it till you make it on social media. Like, we can tell any story we want because we're the editor, but it's not true. And then we play the comparison game. I talk a lot about that in my book. Like, it's just a trap.
You're a man of faith, man. So I think, you know, you'll hopefully see this the same way that I do, but this isn't like the modern problem to men in 2026. Like, this is the original sin of man in the garden. The minute that they stopped walking and living intentionally with God, they didn't go put a mask on to cover their face, but they did feel ashamed and they covered the other part of their body, right? It's the same messaging, just wrapped up in a different thing. So if we are not aware and intentional about walking with God, walking with God's purpose with our lives, we'll feel ashamed and we'll feel the need to cover up. That's what a mask does. Covers us so that person that we are, the outside world doesn't see. Well, what did Adam and Eve do? They covered themselves because they felt ashamed, felt naked and afraid, ashamed, right? So it's like, we have to, like you say, live intentionally every single day. And what your 7Fs are, we have 5S, you know, it's almost exactly the same intentionality.
Yeah. A really good book is The Men We Need by Brant Hansen. You ought to check that one out. But he talks a lot about that, the garden and man's responsibility and how we get sidetracked and all this other garbage that isn't about what it really means to be a man, but for some reason we think it is. How do we help men take these masks off? How do we help men be authentic and real? And is it going back to their childhood? I mean, Josh, it sounds like started with your childhood by asking about your dad. Is that a lot of it? Is it going back and talking about wombs and how we mask those wombs with other things? How do you help men there?
Yeah, so I have a colleague in the space. Drew runs Husband Material. It's a ministry that helps guys overcome pornography and become husband ready, right? So business and ministry runs very aligned with what we do at the Rebuild Man. And Drew wrote a book called Outgrow Porn. And his entire messaging and thesis kind of behind that book, it's never a man that is struggling with porn. Porn has become a pacifier to a wounded child that is inside. And the pathway to to healing the addiction is healing the childhood wounds, right? I mentioned for me, a big mask that I wore was one of a bodybuilder, one of physical strength and presence in a room because I felt, the size of an ant when I was 15 years old. I never healed that. Like I just pushed it down and then ran to the gym. And it's funny because, this is glorified in the fitness community. It's like, what do we do with our emotions? This is like a trending meme. What do we do with our emotions? We hide them in our muscles. It's like such a bad message. Like I used to subscribe to that. Like if you feel bad, just go run to the gym and suppress it down. While I still think that there's a lot of processing that can be done in the gym, I think a lot of people in the fitness space are actually wounded and they're not using fitness properly to heal. But that was me, man. I just pushed everything down and said, you know what? Screw you, world. If you're going to make me feel that way, I'm going to become so big, strong, and powerful that nobody's ever going to be able to hurt me. So yeah, I definitely think that it is healing the wound, man. It's like we all have something from our childhood, from the ages of 4 to 7 years old, before we were, consciously aware, that impacted us, whether it was how somebody reacted when we threw a ball and broke something, or, we spilled something on the floor, whatever it is, right? Parents aren't doing this stuff intentionally, but most parents are raising children when they're still wounded children themselves. So it's like, we just got to be hyper aware, man. There's obviously inner child work, which is like a big thing in kind of the personal development phase. I don't know if I subscribe solely to the philosophy, but I think they're pointing at a lot of the same things. One thing that Josh had shared with me, why did you ask me that specific question? He said, because in order to understand your relationship with your earthly father, you have to be aligned with your relationship with your spiritual father. So he was helping me understand that before I was a son in the world, I was a son to God. I was a spiritual son to Christ. So I needed to accept that sonship first before I could heal anything that's broken from me through my father's relationship. And there was a lot of anger there. As I mentioned, he and my mom separated when I was 15 years old. And through my 20s and 30s, it was like, 2 fingers up to him. Like, I'm going to do everything that you didn't do. Now, today, my dad's one of my best friends. Like, I love, and I realized none of that was done intentionally. But yeah, I think this journey of taking these masks off, we have to get to the point where we first put that mask on. And for most of the men, it's going to be at a young age. The successful guy, for example, maybe grew up without a lot, right? Saw mom work 2 jobs, saw other kids that had a lot of things. So he said, you know what? My pathway out of this is to not understand how I feel, just force my way through success and building something without understanding that actually you can do that while being a healed person as well. So yeah, I think getting the mask off, you go to where the mask was first put on. And then here's the key. All transformation starts with truth.
Sure.
So you have to be open and honest about everything, about how you felt then, about how you feel now, and just begin to walk in truth and integrity. But yeah, I think getting to the point that mask was first put on, and it's going to be somewhere in childhood.
Speaking of truth, I would subscribe that we need to start with the truth, the word of God. Do you see that as well as you work with just Christian men, or is it just entrepreneurs?
So it's not just Christian. I say we are an organization that is built on faith, biblical rooted principles. But one thing we strategically done, because in our particular space, faith in the church can carry a lot of shame. And a lot of guys that are struggling, that maybe grew up with the church in their home, feel abandoned or unworthy of God's Christ. So if we come out too biblical or too Christian oriented, we will kind of push a lot of those people away.
Yeah, I get it.
But 100% our mission is rooted in bringing guys through some level of spiritual transformation. But we'll open it up to guys that don't subscribe to Christian worldview as well. I feel that's the ministry part of what we do.
How much does the truth of God's word play into helping men overcome their addictions? Does it need to start there? Or is it just a matter of them being truthful with themselves about their past and their present?
Well, for a guy that is operating out of the identity of a Christian, right? He puts that mask on because I don't think it should be a mask. But if he's telling himself he's living a Christian, faith-driven, God-centered life, it has to start there. Now, we will help the guy that isn't there.
Sure.
And it would be difficult for me to say that guy needs to understand God's word and how it's impacting him until he's accepted that into his life. So I don't say it's a loaded question. It's a question that's got to be, I think, answered with understanding that there's 2 types of people. But if you wake up with the identity that I am a Christian, can we get real here? Right? There's a lot of people that are Sunday morning Christians.
Absolutely.
They show up for an hour on a week, they bring a book, they do a little bit of worship. And then for the other 6 days and 23 hours out of the week, they're living with their desires.
Yeah.
That guy got to get truthful, man. Like, is this thing that you're doing every single Sunday? It's not a Bible, it's a composition book, but the thing that you're doing every single Sunday, and that's a mask, and allow God to work through his heart. So for that person, that should convict some people, because I'm sure you and I would probably agree that 50% of the people in the church, that is who they are. They're doing it out of
obligation.
Obligation.
Yeah.
It's even worse
pressure
today, right?
Yeah.
Because they're doing it out of social media recognition. The guy that's got
Validation.
his cell phone and
Validation.
validation, and is filming the worship music so he can share it with his 300 followers so he looks like a good man. Reality, he's screaming at his kids, 10 minutes later when they're in their parking lot. That guy needs to start his day every day in the word and start living the truth out and let the word work in and through him.
No, that's powerful. I know that you help a lot of men do different things. What is the biggest excuse you hear, emphasis on excuse, for men not stepping up and being real men? Is it time?
Time would be up there, not stepping up and being time.
Is it just they're afraid of being real?
I think so, because show me your calendar and your bank statements and I'll show you your priorities, right? And included in that, you probably need to see your screen time, right? The average person, I don't know, what is it, somewhere 6.5, 7 hours per day on their screens and devices. We all have the time. We've fallen into these excuses, and I think it's lack of intentionality, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
It's like they don't know, not that they don't know how to do the things, they aren't willing to sacrifice enough of the comforts that their life has given them to be intentional about doing the difficult things that it takes to be the man that they say they want to become. It's like, one day I hope that this will happen. Well, hope is not a course of action. So it's the lack of intentionality and acceptance of mediocrity and comfort, which we could get into a whole different conversation of that's done intentionally. I would say yes, but whatever. So guys are just accepting mediocrity because the world around them and they've allowed mediocrity to surround them. Mediocrity in their fitness, mediocrity in their walk with God, mediocrity in their relationship. They're not intentional about. A real man dates and pursues his wife just in the same way, if not more intentional than he did when he was courting her. Most men, the minute they put that ring on, she says, I do. It's like they're done at the finish line. It's like, no, you need to be intentional about making that woman feel pursued and desired more than you did when you were courting her. They're not intentional about showing their kids the values that their family subscribes to. They don't even have family values. Like they're letting the internet and the screens raise their children. They're not intentional about having conversations at the kitchen table. They're not intentional about who the men are that they bring around themselves to hold them accountable into a higher standard. So as I'm now unpacking this, I don't think it's time. I don't think it's excuses. I think it's lack of intentionality.
No, I agree. And I wanted to hear it from you. Everybody says it's time though. And I kind of baited you with that because that's what everybody says, but it's a lie because we all have the same amount of time. But what separates, I'm just going to say, successful legacy person versus non is intentionality. What time they went to bed so they could get up early and have the morning routine and work out and meal prep and all that.
The mask of real intention, right? Time is the surface level mask of what the real issue is, which is the intentionality. Once again, we all have the same 24 hours. Are we intentional? Which is why you unpacked my answer that I gave you guys at the beginning, right? I'm intentional about how I move, what I put into my body, what I put into my mind, and who I surround myself with. So I'm intentional about how I spend my personal time every single day. If I do those 4 things, then I could show up in a way that I could serve the people that need me most, both in our business, but also on our team, and then also in the family and the people that surround myself with socially. But I need to be intentional about how I spend that time.
Yeah, well said. I see it all the time. Like I've got several habits I do, which are going to result in some big goals, but a lot of them take 3-4 minutes a day. Like it's not a big deal, but it's building them into your day. So you do them. And if it means less screen time, so be it. Like it's okay. I'm not going to notice. Talk to me a little more about what you guys do with helping men get out of the porn. And why don't we talk about this more? You made a statement that we didn't talk about it much then, but we're starting to talk about it now. How has culture shifted on this? And how has that made it easier for you and your platform?
It's still definitely not where I believe it needs to be. That's shifting because I think the younger generation is beginning to understand the true dangers behind it. Here's one reason why I don't think we talk about it, at least to the depth that we need to today. Porn isn't new. Porn has been around since the dawn of time. Porn, right? The objectification of the female body through a visual representation. The main issue with today, though, is that it's been capitalized on and packaged in a way that we never had before, the first iPhone.
So accessible.
So accessible, right? And it's so addictive by nature. Kids are getting it between 8 to 11 years old before their brain is fully developed. So they're now getting it wired into their nervous system. It's objectifying sexuality. It's distorting sexuality. So there's so many dangers around what it's done to society. But I think a big reason as to why it doesn't get talked about enough, and this is beginning to shift because a lot of big research is coming out now and a lot of bigger platforms have had some people on that are kind of at the forefront of this conversation. We know now that the internet porn is just as addictive as smoking, pharmaceutical drugs, street drugs, and alcohol. Like there's been enough research done on the brain and how it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, how it hijacks reward systems, how it overstimulates dopamine receptors and really fries motivation motivation in young men. So it was never talked about because, one, I don't think old porn, and I say old porn like magazines and VHSs, had the same level of addictive nature behind it. So
Because of accessibility or because of
accessibility, and the drug is delivered. Like back in the day, like if you wanted to get porn, one had to go public and get it. So it was more accessible, less accessible to get it. But now, before the age of 10 years old, a young boy can see and experience more naked women than the greatest king, ruler, sultan could just 100 years ago. The male's brain is not equipped to handle that. So the drug, it's like when fentanyl hit the streets, like it started killing a lot more people. Like marijuana didn't do that, right? Is it good or bad? I'm not here to have that conversation with people, but when it started getting laced with fentanyl, it became much more dangerous. Let's say that the internet now has laced pornography with fentanyl, much more dangerous, endless, done in secrecy. So the big 3A's are accessibility, right? 100% private in your pocket every single day. It's affordable. It's free, right? You don't have to go anywhere, buy anything. You can get it on social media sites today, and it's anonymous. So you can sit in private in your dark bedroom, consume it without anybody ever knowing. I struggled with a 20-year porn addiction. Not a single person in my life knew it. If I had been an alcoholic, there would have been dozens of people around me that knew I was struggling. If I was addicted to heroin or crack or any other drug, people would have known it because my demeanor would have changed. But you don't get porn breath when you watch it. So it's not like you go out and people are like, oh, this dude's been watching porn because his breath. It's like, no, there may be a hollowness to your look. There may be a dip in your driving motivation, but most people aren't going to pick up on that. So packaged differently, it's hijacking people a whole lot differently, which is keeping us from really having the conversation.
I feel like maybe it's just because it's overcoming, but I almost feel like I can't identify it in guys sometimes. Like my wife would be telling me about a friend of hers and I'm like, well, her husband's into porn. And she's like, how do you know? I'm like, listen to the conversation.
You can because you walk in freedom and purity. Here's the struggle. 70% of men between the ages of 18 and 30, 75% of men ages 18 to 35 in the church watch it regularly.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's maybe a small fragment of you and I that can identify it, but everybody else, it's like they're the frog in boiling water, right? So you don't know what you don't know, right? So if it's just normalized to you, then when you hear another guy talk that way, live that way, respond that way, you're like, oh, he's just a dude, right? Because every guy does it. That's one of the major excuses that we'll get from people. That's one of the common excuses that women get when they bring it up to men. Oh, it's just normal, no big deal. Every guy does it. No, they don't, brother. And it's actually really dangerous for you. And if you saw yourself sitting on the toilet, looking at a screen, like you probably would be really ashamed about what it looks like.
Well, shame always is associated with it, right? I mean, nobody's happy when they're done. That's a deadly weapon that Satan has used, is that lie that it's normal. And it's acceptable because of that, but it's not. It's a lie. It's just like in the Garden of Eden. It's still a lie. It's still not right. And we could talk all day about all the side effects of it, but the reality is it is wrong, and we shouldn't normalize it like we do. What's the next step for you? What do you guys got coming next? What's your big ambitions?
You know, we're committed to building the #1 community and organization in this space, helping men. You know, we've been pretty successful doing that over the last 6 years, 30 plus countries. One thing we want to begin to roll out, you know, because we've been an online based, you know, virtual community that meets, we have daily meetups with our guys, weekly brotherhood calls, you know, a lot of curriculum that guys walk through. There's a lot of powerful stuff that happens in person, but I think where society is going, I think that this is a byproduct of AI and just people just kind of being forced inside. I think people are waking up to the need of real connection and relationships. So we're looking at, you know, bringing things more in person. How do we get the guys that we are serving together in a room, whether that's done in small, intimate retreats with 8 to 10 guys, or we do big, massive events where we're bringing hundreds of men together. But we want to continue to create the best online community and resources to help men, but now taking things to the next level in our organization, bringing guys together in person, just to strengthen those bonds, to strengthen that relationship, to strengthen that brotherhood so that we can continue to help these guys level up, become the men that they need to be, because we know when we change a man's life, like it just doesn't stop with him. It carries over into his family, into his business, into the legacies that he's building. So just continuing to serve men at the highest level we possibly can, transform men's lives, and, you know, long-term, you know, mission and goal that I'll push to early was to eradicate the world of pornography addiction. So we've got a big fight. And we need a lot of men on board with us to accomplish that. So how do we build ambassadors? How do we continue to build coaches in our organization so that it just doesn't stop with me? We are helping other men that help other men that help other men.
Yeah. Have you heard of John Eldridge? He's got a thing, they do fires, call it fire circles or fires. Are you familiar with that?
The fires, but yeah, I'm very familiar.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how he's trying to connect people is I agree to host a fire and then they put me on the map and then people I think can contact me if they want to. And then we do a monthly fire meeting and you create this in-person meeting. We've had some of our house not necessarily under John Eldridge, but just to talk to young men about what's really going on. And there's something special about a fire because, it's dark and your eyes are on the fire. And, as men, it's almost easier to share if it's not straight across from each other, but shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah. What takes us back to our root in nature, man. Guys were sitting around fires long before they were sitting across each other on a screen. So there's something real that happens. It's interesting. I'm a big cigar guy, but it's like some of the deepest, most impactful conversations that I've had in my life have been, sitting shoulder to shoulder with a guy at a cigar lounge or outside on the patio at a lounge, fire in front of us, fire.
Yeah.
There's something truly innate in us in those moments that you're speaking to. This is where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Real and intimate. Frank, what's something you're doing right now that your future self is going to thank you for?
Training, continuing to train. I mentioned I found the gym very, very young, maybe not for the best reasons then, but the more and more we understand about the importance of strength training and how muscle is the muscle of longevity, the more I'm committed to it. So training 5-6 days a week.
It's good. Okay, next question. If you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would you tell him?
Everything's going to be okay.
It's interesting in that movie, The Kid. That's kind of what he tells him. It's all going to work out. What is a favorite quote or book that you have that's inspired you?
My email, it's going to point back to the importance of physical strength and development. But my email signature for a decade plus has been, I'm going to butcher this. It's Socrates. I should know it. Quoted it yesterday on the fly. No man should reach the end of his life without seeing that which his body is capable of. What a shame it is to grow old without ever. No man should be an amateur in the area of physical strength. What a shame it is to reach the end of your life without knowing that which your body is capable of. Socrates.
Oh, it's good. It's so good. And I would argue we've yet to see that man, who's been intentional their whole life and done the things. So It's good. If this is your final message, what's your signature to the world? What do you want the world to know?
All success and freedom is rooted in truth.
That's good. We need truth. We need authenticity. Frank, how do people find, follow, connect with you guys?
Yeah. Coach Frank Rich on all the platforms. Easiest way to find us, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Very, very active there. You can check out our podcast, The Superhuman Life episode with you, and 330 plus other episodes over the last 7 years with experts in many of the things that we talked about here today. So you can find that on YouTube or Spotify or any of the platforms. But best way to find me is on Instagram. It's where I'm most active. Drop me a message. Let me know you found me on the Kill Complacency podcast, and looking forward to connect with everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you, Frank. Just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways in which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.